Alright, so I made this super light Meteor 65 with their new Beta FPV 0702 SE motors, and these are the 25,000 kV. So the reason I decided to make this build is because I wanted to try out these new Beta FPV 0702 motors on a 65mm tiny whoop. And so they have the 0702 SE 25,000 and 27,000 kV, and then they also have the non-SE version in this red color here in 27,000 and 30,000 kV, and this one here is the 30,000 kV version. And the difference between the regular and the SE is the SE is a little bit lighter. It's like 1/10 of a gram lighter. The bearings are different. It's like a bushing, I think, on the SE, and then the dual ball bearing on the standard one, or the red one here. So slight differences between the motors. I haven't tried the 30,000 kV ones yet. I wanted to try this one first. This is by far the lightest tiny whip I've ever built, and it is far lighter than even the Mob Light or the Mo Beetle 6. This is the lightest one previously that you can get in a bind and fly. Obviously, I built this as a pusher. I did a bunch of videos already on how to build pushers, so I'm not going to cover that again. If you need to know where those links are, can't find them on my channel, let me know in the comments, and I'll reply with a link to those videos on how to build pushers. But this is my preferred way of building them, because I just feel like the less airflow being blocked makes it fly a lot better. And I went with the Meteor 65 frame because as you can see, I cut some of the parts off of here to make it lighter, and this comes out, after I trimmed it all out, about 3 grams. The Happy model frame is about 3.2 grams. Now you can trim this one out as well. I don't know, maybe I'll try another video where I trim out the Happy model frame, because this the Diamond F4 flight controller board that you see here, this triangle flight controller board, that's the same one that's in here. This is the lightest one that has Express LRS receiver plus a video transmitter, which actually goes to like 400 milliwatts, which is pretty nice. That flight controller weighs 3.84 grams, which is lighter than anything Beta FPV currently makes. You can get their flight controller without a VTX and then add like the lightest VTX on there, and it's still going to weigh more. I may do another build with this frame, stripped down frame with that flight controller setup. It'll be a little bit heavier, and maybe I'll go with do that with the 30,000 kV motors in the next one. But yeah, so that's why I went with this frame. It's a little bit lighter, but then you do have to trim out a bunch of parts here in this frame to get the Diamond F4 to fit in here. So it's a very tight fit, and yeah, obviously you're going to solder the motor wires on here. So when you cut off the motor plugs, the motor goes from 1.36 grams to 1.30 grams. So you do lose a little bit of weight there. And then, just in case you're wondering, these Beta FPV motors are about 5.58 grams for 4, versus the Happy model motors are about 5.81 grams for 4. So the Happy model motors are also a little bit heavier. And then the camera on here is just a Runcam Nano 2 that I don't know where exactly I got this. I kept a bunch of these because this is a really good camera, and that one weighs 1.33 grams. And last but not least, I am using these little, they're called peak screws. They're kind of like plastic, but like stronger than nylon. And you do have to be careful not to over tighten these because they will strip out. And I'm only using 2 of the 3 screw holes here. And if you're wondering, I have crashed this a ton, and it hasn't stripped out yet, and the motor hasn't bent or anything like that. And you can see here, I just want to show you what happens. If you look at the gap between the frame and the bottom of the motor, there's a little bit of a gap there. You can see when you crash a little bit, it does kind of push up a little bit, but it's not enough where it's going to cause us to snap. So I haven't had any problems, and I haven't even bothered to retighten the screws. None of the screws have come loose. Now do note that the motors, when you buy the 0702 motors from Beta FPV, they do include 2 sets of screws. So they include the peak screws, You can see these are these sort of beige colored ones here, and the metal screws as well. And the difference in the weight of the screws on my scale was 0.27 grams versus 0.10 grams. Now, my scale isn't particularly precise, so a lot of these numbers are going to kind of vary, based on what's on the product pages. So I would go with the official numbers on the product pages versus my scale might be a little bit off. So just understand there's some variance here. And if you want to buy these peak screws separately, they do sell them in packs of, I think, 12. No, they're in packs of 15 here, so you can get these separately if you want. And also, before I forget, I did modify some GNB 250 milliamp hour LiPos to add a BT 2.0 connector on here. The battery weight before was 6.5 grams, and then in this setup here with the BT 2.0, I've reduced weight to 6.35 grams. And you do have to pull off that plastic connector, desolder the PH 2.0 connector, and then solder on the BT 2.0 connector. And then under this heat shrink here is a little bit of glue to kind of hold everything together, because there was some glue that I had to remove before. So I put some welders in there, and so that this doesn't flop around, otherwise it'll just flop around. But yeah, I did reduce the weight of the battery a little bit. Obviously I got rid of the sticker, and this does, I think, help in terms of performance. This is not an easy modification, and you can mess this up pretty easily. So yeah, one of the things you'll probably discover once you take the PH 2.0 connector off is that the negative and the positive are super close together, and if you're not careful, you're gonna solder the wires together, and then this will light on fire. Yeah, ask me how I know. So don't do that. Anyway, not really sure if it's worth it for the additional performance, but I couldn't find any 250 milliamp hour packs that had the BT 2.0, so that's why I went for this one. Obviously, there's plenty of BT 2.0 packs that are 300 milliamp hours, but of course those are quite a bit heavier. And every 1/10 of a gram in this sort of setup does matter, so that's why I went to the trouble of building this battery. But if you want to know why, that's the reason why. Alright, so here's the bottom line. This is what my build weighs. No battery, 15.68 grams. And then this is what the Mobeetle weighs, 17.26 grams. And I did modify the connector on here, the PH 2.0 connector. But I think this will be better with a BT 2.0 connector. PH 2.0 isn't really good for these high kV motors. You just get too much voltage sag. So this with the 250 1S that I built, all up flying weight 22, just a little over 22 grams. And if you're wondering, most typical 65 millimeter whoops before the battery, with the canopy and everything, they're probably going to be around this weight, around 22 grams without the battery. So this is how much of a performance improvement you're going to get. Now, I'm showing you some flight footage here. It's not necessarily that much better in terms of looking at the video, but it just, to me, I feel like I have a lot more control. It just feels like you're flying something that doesn't weigh as much. Basically, that's about the bottom. I mean, obviously, it doesn't weigh as much, so it should feel that way, and it absolutely does feel like it doesn't weigh as much as it did before. Now, I know that, by the time this video is released, Beta FPV has already announced their new lightweight frame and canopy, obviously for standard build, not a pusher build. I am going to get some of those lighter frames. I am told they are going to be 2.67 grams, so even lighter than this little stripped down frame that I made here. And so I think that is probably what I'm going to go for, is that frame in the next build with the 30,000 kV motor. So that build's going to be kind of bonkers. I think this light setup on this 25,000 kV motor is pretty bonkers. So I can't imagine what 30,000 kV is like, but I think it's going to add more weight. The flight time is going to be lower. Oh, and by the way, the flight time again on this one is not bad. On the 250, I get about 3 minutes. They're pretty aggressive flying indoors. So, obviously when you go lighter, And one of the benefits is performance, but also flight time, because you're carrying around a lot less dead weight. Anyway, I already know, there's probably people that left lots of comments about, oh, they have lighter frames, you dummy. Well, yeah. I started making this about, I don't know, 3 weeks before they announced the lighter frames. So, I can't keep up with them. They make products way faster than I can make videos, which is kind of crazy. But yeah, that's what Beta FPV does, and they just go way faster than I can. So yeah, so in the next video, probably they'll have like even a lighter frame or even lighter motors, and I'll be like behind again. So sorry, that's just kind of the way things go. But just wanted to show that it's possible. Someone asked me a while back, on the Mobile video, which was like a year ago, which by the way I still fly this quite a bit. It's pretty nice. Can you make this lighter? Well, here you go. Sorry, the video is like a year later, but sometimes it takes a while for me to acquire parts and find time to make videos. But if you don't want to go through all the trouble of this, I would say the Mobile is perfectly fine. It's a couple grams heavier. You probably just want to swap out that connector for BT 2.0 connector and get some like Tattoo 300 milliamp hour batteries with the BT 2.0 connector, and you'll probably get like 85-90% of the performance of this. It's definitely not the same. I already know that. I've flown these back to back, and this is definitely way better. But for most people that don't have the level of building experience that I do, you're probably not going to be able to really know. Just moving this one to the BT 2.0 connector is probably going to give you enough of a performance boost where you're going to be pretty happy. But if you if you already know how to build stuff and don't mind doing stupid, tiny soldering and like crazy modifications, go for this one. I've heard that you can get these kind of builds even lower. Like, this was like 15 grams. Like I've actually heard, I haven't actually seen any photos, but I've heard through the grapevine that with these 0702 motors and like these little plastic screws and just stripping out everything possible on this frame, you can get it under 15 grams. I've heard like 14.5 grams is doable, which is kind of nuts. They're probably stripping out a lot more of this frame here to get that weight. Oh, and by the way, people are kind of already asking in the comments, how did you get the camera in here? Well, it is welder's glue. So you're like, well, it's just glued. You just glued it in there? Yeah, I've crashed this 100 times easy. This camera is not going anywhere. And I didn't use that much welder's glue. It's just a little dab on each side. You just have to put something in place to hold it so it doesn't like move around while it dries. It takes about 12 hours, and it is in there. It's not going to move. I set the angle to what I wanted. Obviously it's fixed, but it's a little bit flexible, so it has a little bit of give, so it's not brittle, so it won't break in a crash. And the camera is completely protected. Like, you can't hit it. The ducts protect that camera in all angles, so it's not going to get popped out unless you run into something that's sharp, that has like a sharp angle, and directly hit it. Then there's a possibility you might damage the camera itself or the circuit. The circuit board. There's some of the capacitors, whatever, on the board. That's certainly a possibility. Like I said, I've crashed this over 100 times easy, and no issues with this one. The camera has not popped out at all. Anyway, that's going to do it for this video. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Are you guys going to give it a try? If you are, do let me know. I would love to see some photos of yours, and I'll post your photos in the next video. So if you have built something like this in the 15 gram range, I definitely want to hear about it, and I will let other people know about it as well. So let me know down in the comments. All right, that'll do it for now. Talk to you guys later.